In the early hours of March 13th, 1964, 28-year-old Catherine, or Kitty Genovese, was returning home from work. She parked her car in the parking lot near her apartment block in Kews Gardens, Queens. As Kitty walked towards her apartment, she was attacked by a man named Winston Mosley, who had been lurking in the shadows, waiting for her. Kitty screamed for help, and her cries were heard several times by residents in the surrounding apartments. However, despite her desperate pleas for assistance, none of the neighbors intervened or even called the police immediately. The most shocking aspect of the case was not only the brutal murder itself, but also the fact that unfolded that over the course of approximately 30 minutes during the case where Kitty was screaming for help, 37 witnesses heard her cries but did nothing to intervene. And when the police were finally called, it was too late to save her life. The case prompted public outrage and led to discussions about the moral responsibility of individuals in the presence of an emergency. It also captured the attention of psychologists all around the world who were intrigued by how many people had failed to help Kitty in this grave case. 60 years after Kitty's murder, social psychologists are still trying to answer why some of us don't act even when witnessing others experiencing violence or injustices. Hi, my name is Mamobo Ogoro, social psychologist and founder of Gorm. And if you want to learn how to unify across differences, make sure you're subscribing to our channel. Unfortunately, for some of you, we are not becoming a true crime podcast. However, the details of Kitty's death and the aftermath inspired so many investigations as to why people ignore others when they need help. In 1968, psychologists John Darley and Bid Latané revolutionized the field of social psychology when they introduced the idea of the bystander effect. You've probably heard of it yourself, but the general idea is that people are less likely to help others in need when there are others around and therefore become a bystander. We can see the bystander effect across various situations, from emergencies to everyday interactions. In fact, we are surrounded by these examples all the time. We have news reporting many tragedies, and people were filming on their phones rather than helping. True crime content presents us with the accounts of people surrounded by certain cases who did not act or speak up when they needed to. Videos circulating online, for example, Reddit threads, and people showcasing people being victims of violence, discrimination, and even humiliation, and nobody helping those individuals when they needed it the most. So, why does the bystander effect happen? And as we as humans just purely selfish beings? Darley and Latané think it's because of three reasons. Firstly, in a group, individuals may think others will act, and so they don't. It is known in psychology as the diffusion of responsibility. Secondly, there's a thing called pluralistic ignorance, and honestly quite sounds like a Swedish rock band or something like that, but in reality, it means that people may not help because they think if no one else is helping, well, why should they? Lastly, the fear of being judged. The worry about looking bad or making mistakes stops people from helping others who are gravely in need. And researchers found that other factors may include that people are less likely to help when others are around. And if it was, for example, anonymous, they'll be more likely to help. Additionally, people are more likely to help others who look, act, and sound like them. Go watch our social identity video. So basically, most people are unwilling to help or don't even care about helping others if these conditions aren't really met. Is social psychology saying that all individuals are selfish and we as human beings are just purely selfish?
Not on my watch.
Not really. Let me explain to you why. When most people talk about the bystander effect, they mention what we knew 60 years ago and use examples from news cycles to justify their points. However, social psychologists and sociologists in the past few years have gathered thousands of examples of CCTV footage where in these cases, 90% of bystanders did assist victims in emergencies. So people in their day-to-day, everyday lives are more likely to help others when they're in need or when they need help. But this kind of contradicts what we all knew as the bystander effect.
What the is going on in here on this day?
So, what is the real answer? Remember Kitty that I mentioned earlier? Well, the case went viral in the New York Times, and they released an article titled 37 Who Saw Murder and Didn't Call the Police. But in reality, the article exaggerated the number of witnesses and fabricated parts of the facts to sell the story. And the plot thickens. Also, the story also focused on the ability and morality of the witnesses and less on other factors. For example, the crime that took place in the late hours of the night. There was poor visibility. It was a noisy neighborhood, and witnesses were isolated in their apartments and could not communicate with each other in the incident. All of this made it really hard for them to accurately assess the situation and call for emergency. So yes, the public and psychologists were very quick to partially blame the witnesses for the death of Kitty. However, these accusations were based on not so true facts and the news cycles exploiting the tragedy.
I said what I said!
This brings us to the main point of what makes someone a bystander or not. That is the degree to which people perceive a situation as an emergency, how competent witnesses feel in being able to help, and their ability to communicate with those around them. This perspective completely flips the script. It's not that most people don't care enough to help, but the fact is that we need to assess the situation and see if we're going to be successful in that helping in order for us to act. And you know what the extra thing is in this situation? The ability to help can actually be improved and be trained. This is not only important for crimes and deep emergencies, but it can be also applied for many situations and many contexts. Here at Gorm, we are creating a community of unifiers and supporting those who have been marginalised to feel a sense of belonging. And this involves stepping up and doing something when those in need or who are victims of injustices need that help. And this is why we're committed to supporting people working on the diversity and inclusion journey in order for them to be unifiers rather than bystanders. Active inclusion involves helping people become aware of the different forms of oppression and violence that people may face on a day-to-day basis. On top of that, there are practical and effective training programs that can empower people to feel more competent and confident to tackle and de-escalate complex situations involving discrimination and stigma. Lastly, communication and teamwork are vital in addressing injustices right there on the spot. These types of situations don't only happen on, let's say, the TV or don't go viral online. They happen all the time in our everyday surroundings. They can happen when you're commuting, and they can happen when you're in school or in the workplace. So it is crucial to be prepared and be aware and be informed and have the skills to tackle injustices and not be a bystander. Having intercultural competence skills, I can't wink, but wink, wink, and exposing yourself to socially diverse environments and people can also help in this journey of not being a bystander. So no, we're not naturally bystanders as we have been led to believe. We just need to prepare ourselves to successfully support and help others when they need that help.